Welcome, lovely ladies. As was mentioned yesterday, these are some of our partners through this journey of the summit and other programs that we do run. I will very quickly just ask from Alicia, maybe a quick summary of what you did share yesterday about what the World Bank does. But as you wrap that up, to just share what's one or two key things that are emerging for you, having listened to the summit for the last 2 days.
Thank you so much, Nanjira. So just to give a quick summary of what I covered yesterday. So what I wanted to share was a bit more about what my team at the Gender Group does. And ultimately, what we try to do is close gaps between men and women across the world. And we do this in 3 main ways. The first is through research. So really working to build the evidence base and identify tested solutions. The second is really collating this knowledge and then bringing it to our operations at scale. And the third is around policy and partnerships. And so I wanted to share one piece of research that I was really excited about that we've been working on for the last year or so. And the idea was to really understand what the gaps are and what the drivers for underrepresentation are with respect to women in STEM and women in technology around the world. And we also wanted to get a sense of what the solutions are. I think Hawa did a really fantastic job of summarizing it all in French, so I won't go into it in too many details. But in terms of the challenges on the driver's side, what we saw were 3 main things. The first one is around stereotypes. So the idea of the norms and cultures that tell us what is appropriate for women and what we might be naturally good at. And what we see is those stereotypes eventually determine the kinds of subjects women study, as well as the career tracks that they find themselves on later in life. The second was around confidence. And so I think it's important to note that might not be an issue for everybody, but we do see that coming up as prevalent in the research. And so that very much links these stereotypes, and it's really an internalization of those norms that might tell us what we think we might be good at and essentially how we feel about our self-efficacy. So what can we do with the skills that we have? The third one was really about mindsets, and I find this one really interesting because it's the idea of, do we have a fixed mindset? So do we think that skills around mathematics or computer science are innate? Or do we have an open mindset? Do we think these are skills that can be learned? And I think this is one of the most critical things that when we're working with women and girls in STEM more broadly, is to really cultivate this idea of an open mindset. I have a personal mantra that I've been working on lately that it's not magic, it's practice, right? So anything that may seem daunting and you might see, okay, somebody's really good at this and I struggle in this area, it's really about putting in the work. And I think we have to really cultivate that in our girls from an early age. On the solution side, I'll highlight 3, and we really looked at this from more of a life cycle perspective. So starting at very early ages is this issue of play. So how do we teach our girls to play? Do we teach them to solve, to build, to make, to tinker with toys? A lot of those approaches have a really big impact on their interest in STEM and their performance in STEM later down the line. I think when it comes to also building confidence and self-efficacy, when we're talking about high school, it's around exposure to technology. So even if we have computer science in the curriculum, what I've been hearing is it's not very practical, it's not very hands-on. So what can we do to build this exposure, whether it's through extracurricular activities, different kinds of workshops. I know we have partners in the room that are working on robotics for children from a very early age, and building and tinkering. So really working on developing these programs and having our girls be exposed from a very early age to demystify technology. And the third one was around role models. I think we talked about this a lot in the last 2 days, but really having somebody who you can identify with and who really shows what the range of possibilities are. So that's a quick summary of the research that we did. We have a lot of other work, whether it's related to coding boot camps and getting more women involved in those spaces, young women in digital jobs, and some work on women in STEM, specifically in infrastructure. And then to answer your two questions in terms of what's emerging, I think what's been on my mind lately, particularly since in the last few months, the World Bank has been embarking on this idea of disruptive technologies for development. And so I think we see there's a lot of hype about AI and blockchain and IoT. And one of the things I really wanted to hear from this group in particular is, do you find those solutions to be relevant in a very tangible way for you in terms of the problems that you're trying to solve? Or do you think it's really foundational and we have to still focus on the infrastructure? Do we still have to focus on the access and the digital literacy? And maybe it's not one or the other, maybe it's about approaches to both, but I would love to hear that from the group.
Thank you for that. So let's keep that top of mind when we start the conversation. Thank you for that question, actually, comment. Mod, the same thing, just a quick recap of what Internet Society does, and also in the same vein, the key takeaways for you and perhaps a question for the audience to facilitate our discussion.
Okay, I think she's done a great summary. Internet Society is a society that makes sure we all have the internet, and then make sure that it's open to all, and also make sure, though we have different boundaries, geographical boundaries, Internet Society does its best to make sure it goes with each government, make sure that all the infrastructure, internet accessibility, I mean, it pushes a lot of things behind the doors that a lot of people don't know. So that's what the Internet Society has been doing. So we realize that now the prices have been coming down. All these things are politics, but then it's being handled by the Internet Society. And it's a globally connected, trustworthy, and secure internet for everyone. That's our mission. And it's ongoing, all right? But then, when we want to talk about the woman, from our study over the 2 days, you realize that the woman needs that space. You want to have that special group. From there, we'll be able to open up and then work out. Therefore, the Internet Society has this special interest group, which is set up for only women, okay, where we have the opportunity to come up with anything that we want to do. And then within that group, we're able to organize a lot of activities. Today, I'm here in fact, at the end of the day, all of us will be members of this special interest group. So we'll all become members of Internet Society and then members of the Women's Special Interest Groups. We also make sure we fund some projects, which you should also know about, which we also call Beyond the Net program. We provide funding for Internet Society chapters to take on wide range of programs. Internet Society is global. So when you need to join a chapter, and then just apply. Just bring your project. We'll look at it and we'll fund it. People are not applying, especially women. That's what people have been hinting all these while. The projects are there, the fundings are there, but we are not assessing them. So that's what we want to promote this day. Also, we're also saying that there'll be a G20 summit in November, and there's a declaration that's going to come on, okay? And within that declaration, we're going to bridge the digital divide. And what we want to make women know is that we want you to be included, we want you to have the skill, and then we want you to be innovative in everything that you do. So with that, we want to say that we're going to finance women and to also enable them to access national, regional, or international markets. So that is going to be there for you. We're also going to make sure that we promote skills for you to have quality jobs. That's very important. We also want to support women in the digital business. So all these things will be declared in November this year. So just get ready and prepare your proposals, put things together, and And since we are hearing this, let's put our things together so that we go in for the first project. Thank you.
Thank you, Maud. And before we come to Gloria, I do want to ask the ladies in the panel to Alicia's question before I open it up to the floor, because we're mixing up the format today. If I will try and hopefully reframe it as accurately as possible. On one hand, we have disruptive technologies, blockchain, AI, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and a lot of people want to understand what those will mean for our society. On the other hand, we have the age-old questions, if you will. As you said in your research, norms are coming up, stereotypes. We're still dealing with infrastructure and access. It's not as exciting as the shiny new thing on this other hand. For you ladies in this audience, in the work that you do, if you were to advise the World Bank, I suppose, on what to focus on, what would you ask advice in this sense, and why? To the mic, so if you can.
The first thing I'm asking, how have you done this? I want to start the same thing in Uganda. How do I go about it? If it's infrastructure, if it's, I mean, you understand where I'm coming from. Then the digital literacy will have to be embarked on in every emerging place in the country. Why? Because we tend to concentrate in the central regions, all the developed places. Those are always the capital cities. And the women in the village or in the far places from the city tend to be left behind. So as World Bank, as some of these plans are being implemented, can we find a woman in Karamoja, a woman in any place of the country, be brought forward and on board? I believe that will help so much. Before we introduce AI, trust me, it's wonderful, but if digital literacy is not on ground and infrastructure, the other technologies will not help the women.
Thank you, Fiona. I see now there's warm-up. We'll start with Ethel, and then we'll come to the front, and then back to Nick. Ethel, you have the floor. Sorry, yeah, you have the floor.
Hi, my name is Pinky. I'm from South Africa. Just following up on what the lady has just said, I think yesterday we were asked if are we scared to get rich. Putting up that infrastructure, the ICT infrastructure in Africa I think most of the investment in Africa now is going to ICT infrastructure. What conversations as women are we having about being ready to participate in setting up that infrastructure, in owning some of that infrastructure, so that we also as women gain, because at the moment all the infrastructure conversations are led by men. They push us to human capital and all the other projects, which are equally important. But we need to be having the conversation about ownership. We need to be having the conversation about the role of women in rolling out ICT infrastructure throughout Africa.
Thanks, Pinky. And actually, that is why we have the community networks workshops going on, and how those can be a starting point on the infrastructure game. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Abeida Rashid. I'm from Zanzibar, United Republic of Tanzania. I'm not directed to World Bank, but all the speakers and the audience in this room. First, I would like to say that making ICT inclusive for women and girls with disabilities, imagine you are waking up in the morning, you want to read agenda on your phone, and you can't read, or you can't hear what people are saying on the television. So I just want to recommend all of us in this room that I would like to recommend the involvement and participation of people and women with disabilities, because they have often unique insight about disability and their situation. In the formulation, for instance, for policy, laws, services on ICT, we must have people with disabilities, because when we talk about inclusion, inclusion is about all of us. So people with disabilities should be consulted and even actively involved. We need to build capacity of people with disabilities. I would like also to ask Africa, when they say about inclusion, what does it mean, inclusion? Does all people are included? Is it in ICT? Is ICT accessibility of ICT? Is there any accessibility of ICT? We would like to recommend to the World Bank, or to appreciate what World Bank you are doing. 2011, we have a report, World Bank report on disability, World Bank report on disability. I know that you are doing a lot about disability. I don't know how about Africa, especially in East Africa, because we read just report in the internet, but we don't know what's going on. So those people, we must be included, because mainstreaming is very important. That's why we are here, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, World Wide Web Foundation, for inviting me here. I just look here, I'm just a person, a woman, I'm only a woman with disability, but I know that I represent others who are outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abeida. Yes. We'll take one more from the floor, come back, and then back to the floor again. So I do know who has hands up, but yeah, over to you.
Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Bouchranas Rousselat, je viens de l'Afrique centrale, précisément du Tchad. En fait, en parlant de l'Afrique centrale, j'aimerais poser quelques questions à la Banque mondiale. Bon, chez nous, surtout en Afrique centrale et particulièrement au Tchad, on ne voit pas vraiment les actions concrètes de la Banque mondiale. En fait, tout ce que nous remarquons jusqu'à aujourd'hui, les grandes institutions, les fondations s'investissent uniquement et beaucoup plus dans la partie Afrique anglophone, mais Afrique francophone est vraiment négligée. Alors, nous faisons partie de l'Afrique, nous faisons partie de la communauté mondiale. Donc, pourquoi pas investir les bons projets au niveau de l'Afrique centrale et surtout au Tchad. Même si on cherche des données par rapport aux statistiques et tout que la Banque mondiale effectue chaque année sur son rapport, il n'y a pas assez d'informations sur le Tchad, en fait, d'une manière générale. Et nous avons vraiment besoin de votre soutien pour avancer, surtout pour accompagner les jeunes filles dans le domaine de la technologie. On a vraiment ce manque-là. Il faut que la Banque mondiale trouve des solutions. Il faut que la Banque mondiale s'investisse vraiment pour aider ces jeunes filles. Les jeunes filles, on a assez de filles démunies qu'il faut les soutenir. Et ensuite, j'aimerais savoir exactement quelles sont les visions de la Banque mondiale sur l'Afrique centrale. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Okay, we'll bring it back in. Alicia, I don't know if you want first right of reply, and then we'll work our way to Gloria and the others on the panel. Anyone else can start. I think Alicia is still taking notes on all the questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Nanjira and to the floor. Very thoughtful questions. I just would like to address the issue of inclusion because it's an area that is very, important in the work we do. And just to give you some context on when we talk about human rights, when we talk about inclusion and participation, what do we mean? Senegal is having elections in February 2019. So 2 weeks ago, I organized a meeting with all associations of people living with disability to discuss what political participation means and what inclusion means when we talk about when it comes to participative democracy in our country. And for me, it was a point to go beyond, the general approach we can have on sensitizing about war, and to address the specific needs of specific components of our societies. In terms of law, electoral law, what do we have? What does our electoral law say? How inclusive are our electoral regulations are? How does it take into account disability? When it comes to voting, what kind of voting material do we put in place? When political candidates, presidential candidates, talk about policies, about their project, about what they would like to do, how do they take into account disability? And it was an eye-opener because because we realized that, for instance, take Senegal, there's only one provision in our electoral code with regard to disability. And it's only on people with impaired vision, stating that they can be accompanied by somebody who can help them cast their ballot. And for us, it was so limitative because who are you casting the ballot for? Did you get all the information? Were you part in the process of validating and of choosing? And do you know what the person in the first place offers as a agenda for development? So bringing back to technology, these are the kind of issues that we would definitely address. And if we receive projects, for instance, that target specifically marginalized groups, discriminated groups that are often left out in our policies. These are the kind of issues that we see that when we talk about technology as a tool for change, the technology that address, the inequalities in our societies, the exclusion, etc., etc. And I think that what the question, and here taking it back to the audience, is to really, for us, how we can harness the power of technology, the power of congruence, to use it for the public good, to use it for public interest. And we can go as far as litigation, because litigation is one of the tools that are offered to us. And what when we came out of the conversation, what we saw is that we need to put in place mechanisms that can assess how people are discriminated, people living with disabilities, as the discriminated against, document it, and take it to the next level. Because our countries adhere to convention, even sometimes, especially if you take Francophone countries, we have laws, we have regulations, but we never implement them. So the power rely on citizens to put that ask out there and to use the tools and the means we have to ask for redress, but also to ask for their rights to be implemented.
Thank you, Hawa. I'll actually rope in Gloria real quick, who will share. She's low-key. I think some questions that do apply to Alicia's question will apply to the African Development Bank. But before we get there, maybe just a quick recap of what the African Development Bank is doing on the topic of gender and technology.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Nanjira. It's on. Okay, so when it comes to gender equality in tech, as a bank, we try and mainstream gender in all of our operations because we're a development bank, we lend to governments, we lend to private sector. And in each of our operations, then that is the way in which we try and mainstream gender. For example, if we're lending to governments for the laying of fiber optic cables, then we'll try and see how in that project we can be able to carve out a way in which the internet can be a useful means of empowering women in those countries. In Ghana, we had an infrastructure project, a road project, I forget where exactly, but one of the components of that project was seeing how we can equip schools along that road with computers and also training teachers on ICT skills, and then so that they can then be able to train students on basic digital literacy and ICT skills. So in each of our operations, we'll try and find ways in which we can include women. This is also through our education projects because most in our operations with governments, most governments have a priority on skills developments, and they take a lot of financing from the bank for example, like education projects or setting up universities and centers of excellence. And so in our education projects, we'll incentivize women and girls to take on STEM courses, ICT courses, and we will do that through providing scholarships. On the issue of digital literacy, I agree with the lady from Uganda. I think it's a critical thing that we need in the continent because most of the women they live in poor areas and they live in rural areas, and these are the places that need the infrastructure the most, and they need the literacy the most, and on top of literacy, they also need digital literacy because those are all barriers and hindrances to their access and their use of the internet. So I agree that we definitely need to find ways of lowering the cost of the internet for them, making the internet relevant for them, because unless we have content that makes it relevant for a woman to feel that she needs to use a mobile phone, then she will not use it. And she will look for means of empowering herself socially and economically through other means. So we need to make ICT relevant for them. There needs to be an economic incentive for them then, because we can't just say use it. There has to be an intrinsic drive within them that makes them see that if I have the mobile phone, if I have the internet, this is a way in which it can empower me and my family and my community. We are trying to do some work around digital skills through our Coding for Employment program, which is a program to equip our youth with digital skills, ICT skills, preparing them for jobs of the future. And we're doing this by establishing centers of excellence in 5 pilot countries. That's Kenya, Rwanda, Senegal, Nigeria, and Cote d'Ivoire. Those are the pilot countries for our Coding for Employment program. And we're partnering with Facebook and Microsoft to roll out the program, essentially equipping young people with ICT skills, digital literacy. And I think it's a critical component because even as we talk about emerging technologies, AI, robotics, IoT, I find that there's a threat that it could be a bit too far removed from the reality of most African women. And unless we bridge the digital divide as it is, then they will never catch up. The digital divide is already so big as it is that even as the digital revolution is ongoing, unless we employ and deploy radical measures to bridge the digital divide, then in fact, I think in the African continent, they might just not catch up, even as we move forward with other emerging technologies.
Thank you. And as the mic makes its way back to Alicia, even the question that we've had about Central Africa, Francophone Africa, those divides that already exist within the continent, it does, I think the question starts answering itself. What is AI when there's no access to even leverage it? So Alicia, I don't know if you have quick reflections, and also Carla, about from what you've had so far, and then we'll go back to the floor.
Alors, je vais essayer en français, mais je suis désolée parce que je suis jamaïcaine, donc c'est comme ci, comme ça. En fait, le travail qui traite l'égalité entre les sexes et la technologie, c'est assez nouveau pour la Banque mondiale. Mais on a beaucoup de projets dans l'Afrique francophone. Par exemple, Niger, Côte d'Ivoire, Bénin, Burkina Faso, et Sénégal et quelques autres. Donc, en fait, pour être vraiment honnête, je suis pas aussi au courant en ce qui concerne Tchad spécifiquement, mais je peux faire recherche et on peut discuter après et oui, continuer la discussion.
Okay. Carla, any thoughts? And more questions will start. We'll be coming back to you in a second.
Yeah, thank you very much and good morning. I feel a little bit sad that it's the last day, but we are in the middle of the conversation. So we have a couple of points that I wanted to raise, which was more related to the AI and to the development, of course, of technologies. I think that here the question would be, and this is more for institutions like UN, international organizations, to take notes and to get back and do some homework, would be how to use AI and the development of technology for social good. So how to use AI to include more women, to address issues such as online violence that we have, I mean, we said over the last days that is still considered as one of the main barriers for women to access online, and how to use AI, so again, robotics and emerging technologies to help women to produce relevant content, going back to the discussion that Gloria just raised. So unfortunately, what we might see, we have recent studies that are coming up from different institutions, but I'm afraid that what we will see in the near future is that the AI will actually increase the gap, and especially will increase the gap between developed countries and developing countries. So while I understand from Fiona's point, and from all of you, also from informal discussion that we had during the breaks, that there is still the need to address basic digital literacy, affordability issues, I think that in parallel, we also need to start to address the issue of, or at least start to understand how AI can bring something positive. Otherwise, I believe, I'm scared that the gap will continue to increase. And also going back on some of the points that were raised, we do not only need solutions or ICT, ICT solution for women. We need ICT solution designed by women, because that is another thing, and this goes also back with the AI. AI is bringing bias, gender bias, because of course it's designed by men, and therefore, automatically we bring the bias. So we need more solutions designed by women. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. And as I go back to the floor, I just want to use moderator privilege real quick for a comment. There's the language, especially with artificial intelligence, on how we use it for social good. I think part of the question in our conversations is we want to create the AI. But to create the AI is where the questions of norms, the question of access to the technologies comes in. I would imagine artificial intelligence could be, if I'm activated, I'm thinking of building something that maybe just helps me with chores in the house. But to do that, I need those constituent parts. It's these parts that, unfortunately, in how we're designing programs, we're leaving behind. We're like, they'll solve themselves, let's go with the shiny new technology. So maybe it's not about either or. Maybe the edge of technology and how we support work and how we support the programs and how Internet Society funds work is how those threads are all pieced together, not necessarily an either or. Nick, and then this way, and then I'll see more hands. Okay, 3. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead.
Hi. So that's a great conversation. What I'd like to ask you all is, in tackling this issue of bias in AI, is how are we going to address the gap between the tech know-hows and the critical thinkers in Africa? So we have an issue throughout our universities and our group tech hubs and so on, is we don't bring together technologists and critical thinkers. Now, the reason why there is masculine bias inside AI is not just because men. It's also, even if we put women in there, AI is 30% of programming languages are dominated by English. 80% of thinking in AI is dominated by English. This is at the heart of the machine, right? It's not just kitchens and all of that. It's at the very heart of the thinking. Women in Africa are less likely to speak English than men in Africa. So it's not, so what I'm trying to ask is, how do we make it possible for our policymakers, our leaders of tech hubs, the people who design our university programs and separate the tech out from the critical thinking, to realize it's not just a matter of upskilling people in programming and bringing women in, but we need to maintain always on the table what machines we're actually building and what are the consequences, because they could actually end up. I went to the first AI for Good Summit. There was 3 Africans there in 600 people, right, in Geneva about 2 years ago. I had the most embarrassing experience of being the person from Namibia speaking on it. I'm not even Namibian. Like, this is really embarrassing. And the consequence of these sorts of things are not just we might be having differences between the developed world and Africa, but also within Africa. And this can affect not just digital borders, but also physical borders. People's movements around in the continent and from the continent. So I'm going on a bit, I'm sorry about that, but my question is, how do we bring technology literacy together with a sensitivity to the critical and philosophical thought about things?
Thanks for actually bringing it back beyond AI, because it does transcend all technologies. Thank you for that. Hope everyone is taking all the questions. Yeah, over to you.
Okay, my name is Erica, and my comment is really about having technology. I hear a lot of people talking about digital literacy and getting it to the people and having them learn. But one thing I would like to request for all of us and people who are in positions of action and can be able to do different things is an idea of having technology that fits the context and the culture of people. Sometimes we go and we offer them solutions that are not exactly relevant to the things they are going through, just because we think every woman must know this and know that, but in their culture they have different, or in their context or in their place where they're staying, they face different challenges. And I feel like if we brought technology to them in a way that it's going to be so relevant to what they're doing today, to their children's education, to the things they are going through, and have them design the solution themselves, and then we'll be able to build on that based on what is relevant to them. I'm very passionate about giving people things that really matter to them and will actually be used. We have heard stories about things that have been given to people and they never touch them and they never use them because they don't see how it's directly related to what they're going to do tomorrow, whether it's going to put food on the table or anything like that. So my hope to all of us here who are doing things is that as we are creating solutions, let's not bring solutions from there to them. Let's let our solutions start from the ground and grow up into things that we want, you know, to make real impact. And the second thing is, I happen to be a person who, teaches children and girls involved in how to use computers and coding. And one of our biggest challenges, I come from a country where we speak one local language, unlike many other countries, which is also the main language that people speak, more than English. So what happens is we have more people speaking that language and fewer people actually, unless you went to a good school, being able to speak English. And one of our hardest challenges when we're teaching that, coding and all that, is that it's so hard to get them to understand what that means because they don't know English, they don't know. So you are teaching them, okay, so this is going to do this. And now you first have to teach them what that word is in Kinyarwanda and then get them to understand what it does. And so I thought about an idea of how can we have the most basic things that we teach in coding or whatever in our local languages. And there are so many of us here in this place who are tech people and can sit down together. And I hope that we can get that kind of support and funding to be able to develop the words or the things to help us be able to teach people and explain to them those terminologies in a language that they understand. Then they can be able to create solutions because they understand what they are doing. So that's my suggestion today.
Thank you, Erica. And I think Maud will agree when I say that is why the Beyond the Net program exists, for funding to try and experiment on that. So we're hopefully trying to pair opportunities with these challenges. Yes, you had your hand, and then I think Viti Loho behind the camera. Okay, everybody wants a chance. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll come back to you, Chantal. You had the mic. 6. Okay. Proceed, my sister.
Okay. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci à World Web Foundation et ONU Femmes, parce que c'est eux qui ont sponsorisé. Et je les remercie aussi pour tous les soutiens qu'ils font aux Maliens. Je suis Fatim Diara du Mali. Je fais partie de la communauté Women Techmakers Bamako, qui est un groupe de femmes qui évoluent dans les TIC. Nous faisons des formations, nous faisons des concours et des conférences, souvent des talks de ce genre, pour que les filles puissent être confrontées à des femmes qui sont déjà dans le milieu. Et je suis aussi membre de Internet Society, chapitre malien. Et c'est que le point sur lequel je voudrais parler, c'est surtout l'accès et l'abordabilité qui sont de pair. On ne peut pas avoir accès à l'Internet et ne pas se l'offrir. Donc c'est le grand souci au Mali. Et même les filles qui sont à la maison ou bien à l'école ou à l'université ont du mal à avoir accès, je veux dire, à s'offrir le coût d'un forfait. Nous le savons tous au Mali ou dans les sous-régions comme Togo, c'est plus cher. On s'est dit que c'est à cause de la fibre optique. Le Mali est un pays qui n'a pas accès à la mer. On dit toutes ces choses-là. Mais est-ce qu'on ne peut pas faire plus? Par exemple, parlons de la Banque mondiale. C'est délicat de le dire, mais c'est vous qui offrez beaucoup plus au pays. Donc pour moi, c'est une volonté politique. Pourquoi dans vos partenariats, vous ne mettez pas de côté une clause ou une plaidoirie qui mettait qui forcerait un peu le gouvernement à rappeler ces fournisseurs-là et les services de régularité à donner un prix qui est abordable vraiment à tout le monde. Pas seulement que les filles, mais nous savons, c'est la réalité, quand les hommes ont de l'argent, elles font en profiter à leurs filles, à leurs femmes. Les filles aussi, c'est pareil, lorsqu'elles ont de l'argent, elles font en profiter à la communauté. Donc il faut que tout le monde puisse avoir accès et il faut un coût qui est vraiment abordable. Et c'est le point sur lequel je voulais insister. Merci.
Hello everybody. I just want to remember to all of us that today we are October 11. We are celebrating, world are celebrating Girls International Day. So let's put together our tag and International Girls Days together to strengthen this fight we are driving up. Thank you.
Thank you, Bakatu. We were actually going to celebrate that, so thank you for prompting it. It is the International Day of the Girl Child. We were once girl children, going on still being girls. So I guess maybe that, just a round of applause to just celebrate the fact that we are women gathered on a day like this. Maybe that will call for another selfie. Thank you, Bakatu. Biti Loho, and then my ladies on the table.
Merci beaucoup, Nanjira. Donc, c'est Biti Loho Ndiaye du Sénégal. J'avais une question pour la Banque mondiale. En fait, c'est un conseil. Comment vous pouvez faire pour accompagner les États d'Afrique, notamment les ministères de l'Éducation, à intégrer le codage dans les curricula de l'éducation dès l'école primaire? Moi, je pense que ça pourrait vraiment aider, que dès en tout cas l'école primaire, que les jeunes élèves puissent en tout cas s'approprier le codage, et ça nous aiderait en tout cas à mieux affiner nos résultats dans ce sens. L'autre aspect, c'est comment, dans le cadre de l'appui institutionnel aux États africains, notamment, je sais que la Banque mondiale appuie parfois les États pour la réforme des codes des télécommunications. Comment vous pouvez faire pour, en tout cas, conditionnalité cette réforme par l'intégration des questions de genre dans les codes des télécommunications. L'autre aspect, c'est comment faire aussi pour s'inspirer un peu de la BAD, pour en tout cas, lorsque vous devez financer des projets, en tout cas mettre une clause en tout cas obligatoire, c'est-à-dire l'intégration de la question du genre dans tous les projets que vous financez. Je sais que la BAD l'a fait dans le cadre du parc technologie numérique au Sénégal et avait financé une étude de faisabilité pour l'intégration du genre dans le cadre du PTN. Je pense que ces aspects-là pourraient en tout cas aider tous les activistes à faire avancer les questions de genre. Merci.
Merci.
Hello. Okay, my name is Osika Mesera. I'm a Nigerian, and I'd like to comment on the creation of digital contracts in our local dialects. I work in the non-profit sector in northern Nigeria. I work directly with women in the rural areas. And then a problem we witness most times is having to teach those girls how to code in English, and then some of them do not understand. And okay, because I understand the dialects, I have to translate and all of that. So going forward, I would like to see a situation where we have most of this content in our local languages. I'm already working on one in Nigeria with a couple of the locals to create content in their language, so it's quite easier to teach them directly instead of having to translate to their language and come back to English. And then I also like to encourage those in the rural areas, because not everybody likes to go to the rural areas. So if we can have a situation where we train residents of the rural areas and have them teach the girls or teach the women digital literacy, it will be fine. And then there's a saying that if you want to hide an information from a black man, put it in a book. Now that's because that book is written in English, come on. If it was written in his dialect, I'm sure it won't be hidden, he would understand. Yeah, that's because it's in English. So we need to do more on creation of content in our local dialects. Lastly, I'd also like something to be done to speed up grants application processes, because it's most times when we apply for grants, it's a Herculean task having to follow up, send follow-up mails over and over and over, and then having them come check and all of that. So I'd like something to be done in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Rama.
Yeah. So I would want to say something that it's a bit, you know, all of us here are women, and I believe that from age 0 to 7, we have access to the children being born. And I just want us to have this, know that we have so much power to help our girl children self-appreciate themselves for who they are. And in our homes, we should vary the roles for our male children and our female girls, so that the boys won't feel superior to the girls. From 9 years when they go and they are influenced, if we have given them that solid foundation, I believe what we are going through today will be lessened. Thank you.
Thank you. And last comment for a minute, and then we just need, there's so many things these lovely ladies need to respond to. Yeah, we will come back to everybody. Yes.
Okay, I wanted to add on the issue to do with content, and this is also to respond to my fellow sister over there. I don't know if you've heard about Scratch programming language. It's the most basic, simple language that young people can be introduced to. So Scratch actually right now is offering for different countries to come up and translate it in their own language. And I'm from Tanzania, from an organization known as She Codes for Change. And we are in Tanzania, we are also championing that, and we have already started creating content for Scratch, so that it's going to be easy for the Tanzanian young kids to learn. But the other thing that I want to talk about is there was a presentation that was done during the lightning talk by Thelma. She Codes for Change participated in the African Girls Coding Camp that we did in Ethiopia, that was funded or sponsored by ITU, Danish Embassy, UN Women. and African Union. And one of the components or objective of the entire camp is because they want to mainstream the curriculum. But then when you're talking about mainstreaming the curriculum, that's where it comes, the question of the relevancy of the education according to our context. So currently we've started talking to ITU on how can we go about it. And She Codes for Change also, right now at the moment, we are beginning to do research, but also this is also another opportunity of whereby we can come together, because I understand there are different coding initiatives in different countries. So feel free to approach me. We get to understand what type of curriculums that you are using, either it's short or long term. And then let's look into them. Let's see how relevant are they, what are the needs, what can be changed, what can we do? Because at the end of the day, we as Africans are just consumers of even the programming languages that we are using, but we are not creators. And the aim is, if we want to mainstream this, then let us mainstream something that we have created by Africans for African kids and youth and the entire generation of Africa. Yes.
Amen.
And also speaking about, when we are talking about technology and global competence, we also have to remember that there's a lot that has to be done. If you see the development word, and even just when you Google, maybe top 10 kids who have created an app or something, you don't get a lot of African kids, you know, that have done these amazing things in the technology industry. So we have to begin now. And even as we are beginning, let us always remember the teachers. Let us also remember the parents. And of course, the curriculum and the relevancy of the content to the 21st century.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to ask a quick question. How many have either led or participated in a coding boot camp or hackathon? Just hands up. Some coding program. All right, hands down. How many of those programs you've participated in are still existing today? What my point here is, in 2016, when we had the summit, the first takeaway that was insisted upon is that we need to start seeing scale, and I think Rahama was exactly going there. In 2018, if our partners can agree with us that we don't need another hackathon, we don't need another starter. We have started. We must go. We are on gear one. We must now kick to the next notch. And if we can, I think that remains cogent. I know Anne and others, yeah, sure, I'm coming into that. Others will agree. We've run these things, but then what comes after? All right, Gloria wants to go controversial. We're waking up now, proper. Let's go.
Not really controversial, but I'm wondering, beyond coding, what is the role of women in tech beyond coding? For the women and girls who want to be in the tech sector, but not necessarily interested in coding per se, are we increasing the visibility of the different career options in tech beyond coding, such that different women and girls can see the opportunities for them to plug in?
A resounding yes from the room? We are, aren't we? I mean, we're not all coders.
You see, that's the thing. Can we increase the visibility? You see, because I fear there's a lot of hype. I'm not saying coding is wrong. I think it really helps in critical thinking, and it's relevant, it's needed. But beyond, you see, the thing is, we all have different gifts and talents, and for a marketer, they might not see their role in tech because they might think that tech is just about coding. But are we increasing the visibility of the different career options in the technology sector? For example, being in tech and still being in development. For example, I'm in tech, but I'm a development professional and also a gender specialist. Is there a girl somewhere who knows that there is an option for them in that space beyond coding? That's what I'm just wondering.
I believe, yes, not to use moderator privilege, but going back to yesterday's session on women in STEAM, also because I see the room is boiling. Tweet all those career options, please. Wikipedia them. We will not have enough time to go in the plenary. But there are options. I believe coders, again, how many of us are coders? How many of us are engineers? How many of us are in tech and development? As, you know, Gloria was saying, even on the panel we have them. And there are others, shout them out, just other career paths in tech. Please shout them out. It's not for policy. research, media, investments, bloggers, finance, musicians, actually, yes. Great, thank you. And the choir, if you ever sang in choir, the choir master would say now, not to, it's just to say at this point we come back to try and say, maybe it is about how we are looking for these people. This is why we are in this room, to say it is not that they are invisible. It is how visibility is being defined. I also agree, it is very frustrating to try and support programs, and some people here know we've had this conversation, where only resources are being steered towards coding. We are not all coders, we are not all entrepreneurs, but we are definitely forging these paths. I think the question is, how can our partners convey this back and show that there are other pathways, just as there is coding for employment and such. Alicia.
Thank you. I just want to respond to your initial comment and yours, Gloria, as well. I do want to take a different point, or a different point of view, because I hear you. I think there's a lot of range of careers in technology, but to be honest, the coding is where the money is. Right now, we have research and showing in emerging economies that men are 8 times as likely to work in any kind of ICT-specific role than women. And then I think if we're going back to this idea of talking about who is co-creating AI, who is co-creating blockchain solutions, it's already happening, and there's a ton of money there. And to be frank, it's only the tech bros that are there right now. And so I hear you in terms of the variety of different options, and I strongly support the idea of integrating arts as well. But we have an enormous gap when it comes to women that are working in technical roles and with respect to coding. So just to kind of bring that perspective as well. And I also wanted to comment about your comment about sustainability. So we did some research earlier this year that was specific to coding boot camps. So we spoke to 25 coding boot camps and 7 digital skills programs in 22 different countries with a focus on low and middle income markets. And essentially, when it comes to the business models, what we saw is that the programs that were explicitly targeting women, that were working with women's networks, that were providing care and transportation, and then effectively connecting women with jobs, and also having a tuition model where it was either covered by a corporate, so you didn't have to pay up front, or you paid after. Those were the programs that were doing really, really well for women. But what we saw is those are the ones that tended to be donor funded. And on the other side, in terms of the ones that were the most sustainable, were the ones that had more traditional programs and had relatively high fees. So there's this huge nuance there about how do we keep these programs sustainable, and how do we actually get them to work for women and incentivize these programs to have them work in a way that brings about that balance. So I think we have a lot of nuance there as well. I know I have some questions to respond to, but I can hold those while we're on that.
Thank you. It's very good to have very different viewpoints and nuance. It shows just the wide range. And for me, piggybacking on what Nanjira was saying, is that how we define a technologist. We tend to have a narrow view and a narrow boxing in one, while a technologist is, can be many things. You can be a coder, and you can be an entrepreneur, but also you can be a social entrepreneur. And most importantly, I think maybe one of the way out is to broaden the scope. And this is related to the question of how do we tackle the gap between tech and critical thinkers. Coming from the background of social justice and working with an organization that promotes rights, that promotes participation, and that wants, when we talk about democracy, when we talk about economic, when we talk about artificial intelligence, AI, etc., we always bring it back to how can it be translated to dividend for bettering lives of people, especially the most marginalized one. So there I would say, how can we create a nexus between technologists, advocates, activists, etc., etc. There you can at the same time be an entrepreneur, social economic entrepreneur, but you can also be a social entrepreneur, and you can rely on others in a chain to have impact on, on public, on social issues. For me, for instance, I can just give an example. About 6 weeks ago, a young girl, very present in social media, sent a distress note, via Twitter. She was in a taxi, and she was feeling that the taxi driver was taking a different route, a different direction than where she wanted to go. And so it was really in real time. And people were asking questions, but it's 2 a.m. How come you're a girl, you're in a taxi, etc., etc. She ended up being diverted, being raped, and she was like, people who were following the conversation about her whereabouts online, some of them went and she was able to give her location and be, picked up and taken care of. So about 2 weeks later, and the conversation was online on social media in Senegal mostly about, yes, but why, how, what time, how was she dressed, etc., etc. And about 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks after that, I was sitting with a curator, the director of Women's Museum in Senegal, to discuss how can we do something about it. And we ended up working on right now on an exhibition, building from a concept that were implemented in a university in, I think it's Kansas University in the US. They said, what were you wearing? And we will be having an exhibition for 2 months from October 18 at the Women's Museum in Dakar. And we will take back the conversation on social media, where it started. Because most people, she was, instead of being a victim, most of comments and, she was being really stalked. While she was a victim, she was being abused online, And for us, it's like, technology can be a savior, can be also, women, about issues of women or women's rights and abuses, but also, how to use technology, how to use online presence to advocate and to change mindset and to change narratives. And I think that's when I say to create a nexus between advocates, technologists, and activists, that's where I come from. What these kind of issues, how we tackle very sensitive, very deep issues in our society, but also even among our communities. How can we, as technologists, be advocate for women's rights, advocate for girls, beyond women's rights? How can we hold our government accountable, our institutions? Because that's where I see the power. Maybe if you are, just a pure coder, you cannot do it. You can have a very strong online platform, but maybe it's not your job. You cannot do it, but you can align. You can build a community that will help you and that will help to take the message across and to take it further. That's really, I think that that's what I'm saying, that we need to broaden the scope of what we understand by technology, but also create linkages and bridges between different types of active or social change.
Thank you so much, Hawa. Let's bring just a quick comment. So I think that I was thinking it's a matter of visibility, it's a matter of how we define the technologies. But I think that, and then it comes again back to solutions such as, is we need to give equal opportunity. This is I think the minimum thing that we need to do as when it comes at least from institutions. So we need to give the opportunity for these women to be visible, no matter why do we need to think that if you are not a coder, you cannot have a career in tech. Who said that? No one. And here, I think in the room, we are showing that everyone that has, of course, the interest and that has the passion can be part of the digital revolution.
We can be controversial as well. I think sometimes institutions that shape how resources go do have a role in answering that question. So I think how programs have been shaped have made it sound like women can only participate if they're coders, if they're mathematicians, if there are certain things. And it's what Alicia was saying, sure, that's where the money is. But we as women, one of our strengths is seeing laterally. So I'm a mathematician by training, for instance, but I stepped out of that world. I should be minting money from data science, that's what I'm trained for in algorithms. But I stepped away from that to do public interest work because I have a lateral view. However, going out there to resources, many organizations like the ones represented here, they look at us and they'll say something like, we don't do that stuff. And then they go out and do all the AI, blockchain, fancy, whatnot, and come back to the norms, the stereotypes, the basics, the stuff that is not, unfortunately, very sexy. So I am very presently aware to the fact that that question is no longer rhetoric. It's one that does need to be challenged, and I think this is why we're having that conversation. So I think the question is, how do we get the UN bodies, the AFDBs, the World Bank, the OSIWAs, the Internet Societies, to understand this message that is being conveyed? We appreciate that there's a path you're taking, but sometimes it's not adjustable to our context. So how do we take that back so that we don't get stuck in a conversation of the needs, and it's a bit ethereal. We need to, we must, we can, we should. It's very practical, and I think it is resounding from this room that women want that to be possible, but need to be supported with resources, shaping it that way. Sorry, do a mic drop, but absolutely.
I think the conversation about having many initiatives of coding, etc. Me sitting from the other side as somebody who supports, with a work organization or OSIWA that supports project initiatives. What we see most of the time is that there is proposals to do this, and in many times, when I coding comes, or I want to set up a startup or an incubator, and we see it coming many times. And the question we ask ourselves is, okay, what's new in it? What's innovative? How sustainable? Beyond the first boot camp, what's gonna happen? So the question I ask to you, ladies, is what do you need? What kind of challenges do you have? And what's the sustainable issues or challenges do you encounter all time of that? And how do you think organizations like ours can better understand your needs and accompany you on those needs? Because for me, I find myself a feminist, and I strive, I really want to support girls, women-led initiatives. But the challenge I encounter is having, innovation. I know innovation is a sexy word that we use, but also seeing beyond the training, beyond the bootcamp, beyond the coding, what's going to happen. So if you can maybe help me understand, that will help me better assess proposals.
Yes, we're going to throw that one back. I will start with that table. 1, 2, 3. Let's start with, Mononi's table, you guys, and then we'll,
I think perhaps to just offer some thinking when it comes to looking at how we get women into the pipe. I think that you need people who build the solutions, who are the coders, who are the engineers. That is the reality of the day. But then who sells in the value chain? Right? These are people who need to be digitally literate as well.
And so you not only have a problem where you have women missing in the pipe in terms of building solutions, but you also have women missing in the pipe in terms of selling the solution, in terms of understanding how to unpack it for the consumers who are the end users. And across the entire value chain, we have gaps. So how do we begin thinking about the entirety of the environment, the industries that we want more women in, as opposed to looking at it as, you know, is it a chicken or an egg solution, or we will fund the coders and the builders and leave out the rest? I think the solution is just to look at it holistically. Thank you.
Thank you. Right next to you, I think somebody, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mira, and I'm from Nigeria. I think my question or comment is actually to every one of us. We talked about innovation, we talked about startups, we talked about packaging. Most of the startups are actually targeted towards teenagers. If we all in this room, the teachers, the lecturers, can have a tweak on our African curriculum from ages 6 to 10, we find out that whatever you tell them, they get to understand it, they pick it quick. So if we can, presently, like in Nigeria, there's an interest group I belong to. What we're trying to do is to sell or to try and change the curriculum that is taught between the ages 6 to 10, especially in ICT. Because whatever you teach them between that ages, they tend to grow with it. Than waiting for them to get to 20. At 20, I'm thinking of how to make money. You can't come and tell me innovation, does it bring money to me? That's actually what I'm thinking of. So let's start looking at the curriculum, what we are taught in our schools, the basics, between, in private schools, maybe, especially in Africa, let's begin to look at our curriculum. I think that would actually help the African sector.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Sarata from Korean Analyst. So, talking about the digital gap, I want to say something about it. As we've been training these kids on coding and other digital skills. But what we equally have to look at is leadership skills to give it to them at a younger age. So currently I'm running a program that we are training 11 to 14 years. Though they are very young, we are giving them that skills as well. And what we're trying to do also is for them to look at their environment to build solutions to suit it. Local content is what will give them that drive, will encourage them to do some of these programs. But if it's so abstract to them, they leave them out. And another thing we're also doing with this project is to encourage the girls to be in schools. These are mostly rural areas. And this is not only to get them into the digital area, but also to with the Scratch tool. We also talked about the policies. What I want to encourage all of us is, let's use the bottom-up approach. It's not all the time that we have to be up there to do it, but we can also start from ground there, get the communities involved, and we can make best decisions up there.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Violet from Kenya. I wear different hats, but today I'm here as a woman. Where I say so, I work for government Monday to Friday. Weekends I'm an educator, and I'm also a student. Mine is a comment, and then I'll pose 2 questions that may go to the panelists. Then I'll also propose something I hope we can work together as women, and could be one of the items you can carry home. There's been a lot of progress on getting women to take STEM courses as far as education is concerned. However, it's not equally represented when it comes to research positions as women. I'm interested in research. I'm a researcher. And we can agree, especially in the area of computer science, in Africa, we don't have many women who've really gone deeply into research and give solutions. And everybody here is giving a question, and I'm like, wow, this is a research area. Now I'm asking those in academia, or you may be not doing, you may have an interest in research. Why can't we come together and do something? Get one or two areas from the questions that have been raised, we work towards that. As a team, I'm willing to work for free, but let's work on something. And then maybe when we meet next time, we can give something, publish, and then say this was an outcome of what we did in Accra in 2018. Now, my two questions are, this goes to the panelists and also any woman in the room who may have an answer. And again, it's in regards to research. The question is, which actions do we envision to be crucial in order to achieve greater participation of women in research? What is it that you're going to do? I'm a postgraduate student. I'm the only woman in class. It's frustrating. I remember my professor saying, you cannot do this research because I am a woman. Who said I cannot do robotics? Who said I cannot code? But even the professors who are male think as a woman you cannot do this. I've looked around, I couldn't get a second supervisor as a woman. Most of the professors in what I want to research on are men. Now, for those who are going in this area, I also mentor young women. As I said, I'm an educator. But the thing is, it would be nice also to have a woman supervising you. What can we do to make more women really get into research? It takes time. I know we are looking for money, we have responsibilities, but also we need also to go out there, let people see what we can do. In as much as we innovate, my sister asked, what is it that we can do beyond coding? What is it? There's AI, there's robotics, there's everything, blockchain, all the fancy names. But what is it? After 20 years, are we still going to talk about coding? 30 years from now, let's have a 50-year strategy, whether we'll be here or not. What next? Can we sit and think? I think we like to copy-paste a lot. And this is how we've raised our children, even in school. When you give, I'm an educator, I teach at the university. But even when you give students an assignment, it's always copy-paste. Can't we teach ourselves to think and read? Now, my next question is, now this goes to the World Bank, the FDBs of this world, the UN. Do you support individual research projects? It may not be for money, but would you support women? And how can we go about it? I know FDB has a program. I know other agencies have programs towards that, but most of the time it's pegged to something else. I'm asking as me, would you be able to support a research project? Or would you give me a research idea? I research on your behalf and publish. How would we go about that? And then, let me not talk too much. But I think other questions, I'll put them out on media. We can keep engaging even as we leave.
Absolutely, and thank you, Violet, for that commitment to help figure out how to do a lot of the research. I see all the researchers' heads going like... And I do know how tricky it is, and I unfortunately do have to start bringing it back this way because we have another part of the day to go. We do need consensus on how we actually collect the richness of conversations that has happened here. Thank you for keeping the hashtag trending even on day 3. Please post those questions. I plan to come to that hashtag and collect all that information and share it back to everyone. But coming back to you ladies, because we do have to close at some point, those questions, and I think maybe Violet's question to rephrase the last one is, how are you supporting individuals and organizations that are represented in the room
even when, like the banks maybe just work with private sector and governments and not necessarily organizations, the UN or UN bodies. I think Hawa has given a good sense of that, and maybe we've heard back from our, the panelists what they're looking for in terms of the support. Maud, you can tell us a bit more about whether there's anything so far discussed that people cannot apply for beyond the net. So any one of you can start based on that as we wrap up, what you've heard, what you can take away, how you can support individuals and organizations in the room.
Oh, no. Okay, so starting from the research, and now I speak more as ICU. So we don't have the means as a UN agency to support individual projects. We always need to pass through the government because we are an intergovernmental organization. However, I think what we can do, and this I think what the EQUAS, the partnership that I presented yesterday, is trying to do, is that we work through national stakeholders to actually support the community. So this is for us why key partners such as ISOC, the World Foundations, and other big organizations that have a strong presence on the ground could really help. We definitely need to match what is happening at the global level with the real needs that we have been talking so far. And in order that we then can adapt the solutions that we are trying to suggest to our policymakers, these are solutions that are actually, can actually basically help the community. Thank you.
Okay, for Internet Society, we are interested in research. What happens is that we have different groups under the Internet Society. Sometimes we organize AFNOG, Africa Network Operators Group, where we give opportunities for candidates to present their projects, and then if it's okay, we go back to the drawing board and then fund. So that's also an opportunity that you have to also present your papers, your publications, or some work in progress, and then we'll look at it from there. What I also would like to add is that when it comes, ladies have already discussed curriculum. I'm faculty, so I'm also interested in that. You realize that technology has been changing. So we've been encouraging, our profs, in quotes. We know the technology, but they don't, and they are the change makers. So I'm here to also encourage you to start from the bottom, help us so that the curricula will change. Because now, even if you want to discuss machine learning, artificial intelligence, are you getting in robotics it's not there. You need to find a way of, some of us find ways of training the best students in those fields so that at least they could also help us work on our research. But if we can push it from in different ways, the computer science curricula could change. And that would help, as she mentioned, from the primary to the top. Personally, I've made a lot of write-ups to my government, as in government of Ghana, for us to change how ICT is taught, how we should look at it. And then I'm doing my best as an individual. But then I know that if they go to Nigeria and somebody mentions it, they go to Kenya, another person mentions it, they go to Uganda, I think now they'll sort of wake up and realize, oh, okay, this is what they are saying. Let's go back again to the drawing board and change things. Thank you. Thank you, Maud.
Thank you for that question. I think it's a really important one, and it's something that I've struggled with ever since working at the World Bank for about 5 years. I would say very honestly that our mechanisms and systems aren't set up to support individual research. Primarily the way that we work is through governments, And so one of the things that we try to do, or I try to do when I'm working specifically on projects in countries, is at least bring everyone to the table. So bring academia, bring the CSOs, bring the private sector, and get a much richer understanding and set of inputs about what's going on so that we can really feed that into project design. So I think, one of the things that I can offer, I think it's also very different depending on country context. So we have country management units, ICE at the global level, but there's a lot of variation depending on which country you're in, what kinds of projects there are. So one of the things that I can personally offer is if you have a particular interest and you want to be connected to the World Bank in your country, that's something I can at least try and offer to do and see if there's a way for you to reach out to them specifically to see how they might be able to support your organization or how you can get in the room at least to start getting your voices heard. So I'm here to help. I think it's a huge organization. A lot of us are inside trying to be very scrappy and being entrepreneurs as well and figuring out the best ways to navigate. So yeah, I'm happy to talk after and see how best I can help. But yeah, to be honest, just in terms of the way we function, it's primarily through directly through the governments.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you. I will advise the Kenyan sister, or my foundation, OSIWA, we operate in West Africa. So to the Kenyan sister and the Tanzanian sister, I will refer them to OSIWA, Open Society Initiative for East Africa. And they are very, very involved in issues of disability. They do lots of work on disabilities, right? And the same also to the Kenyan sister, because usually what we do is we support organizations, we support a lot of research, but it's either through think tanks or universities. So if you are in a university, maybe if it is within a research group or a laboratory, this could be something. And some of our foundations also do individual grants, but not all of our foundations. And I want to just to maybe, since we are wrapping up, there were many issues that were highlighted by the poor and the middle income back to the issue of internet cost, broadband, and ownership. All these issues, for instance, if you take foundations like others, fall into our mandate because we work a lot on freedom of expression, freedom of information, and we think that access rights are very key. And you might have followed what happened recently in Benin with the raise of internet cost broadband, And that's where you can have a very concrete example on how you harness the power of technology and of congruence to hold, pressure, to put pressure on governments and even on companies and private sector, and to get what citizens want. And that's really something that I would like to put back to the floor, to the girls and to women here. How we use the power, because you are all very powerful women. You have powerful handles. You have the tools. You have the means. You have the will. Just use it in the best possible ways. There are many organizations that are willing to do many things. They're just looking for innovative ideas. They're looking for confidence. They're looking for willingness to have impactful actions on our communities. Somebody was saying that if your dream is only for yourself, it's not big enough. It's how you impact people's lives. And we talk about people it's like those who are disconnected, those who are not who don't have access. When you design project program, how do you make sure that the rural woman or the rural girls that doesn't maybe have even literacy in French or in English, how do you ensure that she is included in the way you approach the work you do? How do you provide the tool to amplify voices and to bring everybody along? And I want girls and women here to know that there's no one better place than you to change, to understand what girls and women go through in our society and to change,
the digitalization of goals, and you have the means. Just do it, and I think that the rest will follow. When we talk about internet access shutdowns, so recently I mentioned it briefly in Senegal. There is a very contentious article provision in our upcoming Code of Telecommunications. That's with the civil society and the media group doing. I asked them, I told them, this is not a Senegal problem. Most of our governments are going this way. The best way to approach this is to talk to your, a like-minded organization in Benin, in Chad, and build the network, and bring the message beyond your individual organization and countries, and create linkages and put your fingers where it hurts. Most of the time, our government don't want to be shamed internationally. So use the power of your organization, the power of your networks, but the power of your regional organizations and bodies. You have the ECOWAS, you have the AUs, you have other international bodies in advocacy. So this is what I would recommend to you. I was very impressed by our sister from Uganda who talked about yesterday the hashtag they use every Friday, dismantle patriarchy, and their, the association of bloggers, of women bloggers. So these are the kind of issues that I think that you as entrepreneur can give you visibility, can give you presence online, in the digital, but also can help address other complex social issues. So thank you for being here.
Unfortunately, the bank also does not have mechanisms to fund individual research. Usually when we design a project, we bring different stakeholders together, including government, and usually any research or studies that need to be done are based on country priorities and what the governments want to do, and they're the ones who prioritize that and usually help determine who actually does that. So unfortunately, we actually don't have ways of supporting individual research. And to answer one of the questions that I think several people have brought it up about how we can also address some of these things as a policy issue, I think for me personally, I believe that it begins with policy. And for us to be able to influence policy, we need data. And while this is a global challenge, getting data on gender and ICTs, I think it's particularly acute in Africa where many of our countries are not collecting data regularly and consistently when it comes to how women access and use ICT based on gender differences. I know most of the data that is collected by the ITU is connectivity based, basically as an individual and household level, ownership of mobile phones and access to the internet. But beyond that, are our governments collecting data on even the cost of mobile phone ownership? If a woman is owning a phone, at what cost is that coming to? How do individuals use the internet? How are they consuming the internet? Is it for digital banking? Is it to consume media, watching music videos? Is it for empowerment purposes? How many, use of ICT in government, digital government, in policy? I think we actually need to build the profile and of data in gender and ICTs in the continent, and that can be able to provide a good building block to influence policy, because government unfortunately will not build policy without a good research basis for that. So I think we actually need to address the database and see how we can lobby our governments to be able to collect sufficient data, and even if it's working through regulators, because most of them collect the data, our mobile telcos, how can we then lobby them to provide this data, make it publicly available on how men and women access and use ICTs in the different countries. That's my takeaway.
Thank you. Thank you all. Unfortunately, I can't come back to the floor. We are way overdue for the coffee break. This conversation does not end. It's just to say it can continue going. I do really want to sincerely thank our partners who joined this panel. And not just because of that, they agreed to it. They stayed through for it. They could have just written a check and gone home, but they're here till day 3, and they're just, they really are our champions within the organization. So please join me in thanking them for joining us. Thank you, ladies, and thank you for your continued support and partnership. Keep the conversation going through the hashtag, write about it, blog about it,
learning here wants to capture as many videos as possible. For now, though, we're going to go for a quick tea break. If you want these conversations to keep going, do that for 11:45. If you want them to keep going, 11:45. Thank you.